Welcome, dearly beloved chosen ones. Have you ever wondered why nothing ever sticks to you? Why every curse turns into comedy? Why every ritual they've performed in the shadows ends up falling apart before it even reaches your name? Why the people who tried to hex you are now the ones unraveling in real time? It's not luck, it's not random, it's law, spiritual law. You're not just protected, you're on another spiritual operating system entirely. And tonight, we're exposing exactly why their spells became boomerangs. Before we begin, I want to thank each and every one of you who has supported this channel through Super Thanks. Your contributions not only help keep these revelations flowing, but they also amplify the signal of truth in a world desperate for real light. And whether you've donated before, plan to, or simply show up every time and listen, know this: your presence matters. You are deeply valued. I don't take your energy lightly. Now back to the real reason you're here. Let's be real. They really thought a backyard ritual with some dollar store sage, a crooked candle, and a stolen incantation off Reddit could touch you. You, who walk with the weight of divine assignment in your bones. You, whose DNA carries sacred memory from realms they can't pronounce. They tried to curse you using tools that only work on those who don't know who they are. But you were cosmically coded, and that code comes with a firewall. When darkness sends for you and nothing shows up, that means you were never on the menu. You were the one flipping the table. They poured goat's blood and woke up with migraines. They chanted at midnight and heard your laughter echoing in their heads like a ringtone they can't silence. They tried to track your aura, not realizing you're off-grid by default. You weren't hiding. You were vibrating at a level their tools can't scan. What they mistook as stillness was spiritual velocity. And now, it's not just their rituals collapsing, it's their entire foundation. Here's what most people don't know. Even science confirms this. Your body emits a measurable electromagnetic frequency capable of affecting and even deflecting the energy of others. So what happens when your soul frequency isn't just high, it's sovereign? What happens when every attempt to access your field hits a wall of light, not resistance? Simple. They're energy boomerangs. They tried to bind you, but they were the ones who got stuck. They tried to slow your path. But now, they're the ones walking in circles, repeating the very cycles they designed for you. And let's be honest, chosen one. They thought they could stop you with a curse wrapped in envy and a $9.99 spell from the dark web. You, a soul forged in divine fire. They weren't summoning your destruction. They were triggering their own. And now, what they called upon is chasing them like a shadow with teeth. This is the moment where everything flips. This isn't superstition. This is spiritual physics. And once you understand what you're made of, you'll never waste another second worrying about what they're doing in the dark. Because when you're unreachable, the only thing their rituals summon is their own downfall. So before we dive deeper, comment 999 below if you know you're the one they couldn't touch, the one who turns hexes into healing, the one who walks through warfare untouched and unshaken. Type 999 to declare it out loud, in front of heaven and every energy watching. Now, let's get into it. God's chosen ones, their spells backfired. You're not just protected, you're untouchable. Number one, you weren't just protected, you were pre-coded to be untouchable. Chosen one, what if I told you that your safety didn't begin with a prayer, a candle, or even a moment of divine intervention? It began before time. Long before you took your first breath, your soul was encoded with something that most people will never understand. Not everyone is simply protected. You were pre-programmed. Heaven didn't just wrap you in armor. It installed a spiritual operating system that no enemy, no curse, no spell could ever override. Do you ever wonder why things that should have destroyed you only expose the darkness in others instead? You weren't just lucky. You didn't survive that attack, that betrayal, or that spiritual assault because of coincidence. Your soul came encrypted. Before you were born, God etched divine firewalls into your spirit that reject any unauthorized interference. That's why their rituals failed. That's why their gossip fell flat. That's why those psychic attacks, envy-soaked curses, and attempts to sabotage you never stuck. It's not just that you were protected. You were incompatible with their darkness. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. Isaiah 54:17. You don't just avoid spiritual warfare, you neutralize it before it even reaches you. Have you ever noticed how people try to attach their chaos to you, only for their own lives to spiral after? That's because your spirit doesn't absorb poison, it reflects it. Like a divinely coded system, your soul auto-deletes any vibration that doesn't align with your divine frequency. You're not just immune to certain spiritual viruses, you're the kind of system they can't even run on. And every time someone tries to tap into your energy with the wrong intent, they trigger their own collapse. Think of someone like Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for 27 years, targeted, lied on, and isolated, and yet his soul held a vibration that no system of oppression could override. He didn't absorb hatred. He radiated peace and truth so powerfully that even his captors were convicted by it. Like you, his frequency was untouchable, not because of how loud he roared, but because of how divinely encoded he was. People confuse kindness with weakness. They mistake silence for submission. But chosen one, you never needed to clap back, curse, or even respond. You were born with something far more effective, a spiritual boomerang. Everything they sent out, thinking it would land on you, only circled back and exposed them. How many times did they try to manipulate your name, only to end up losing their own credibility? How many cursed you in silence, only to find themselves plagued with inexplicable heaviness? Touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 16:22. It wasn't just a warning, it was a law written into your being. You are the anomaly in their world. That's why they talk about you behind closed doors and still can't shake your presence. That's why they gossip in public but dream about you in private. You left an imprint that outlasts their attacks. And whether they admit it or not, their spiritual attempts backfired the moment they targeted you. Why? Because darkness has no jurisdiction over divinity. When Princess Diana entered rooms full of powerful people, she was met with envy, sabotage, and criticism. But she also carried an energy so pure, so unmistakable, that even her enemies couldn't fully destroy her influence. The more they tried to manipulate her image, the more they revealed their own darkness. Sound familiar? Even in your quietest moments, chosen one, you've made the loudest impact. While others sought protection through rituals and resistance, yours was embedded. Yours was never a shield you had to hold. It was the vibration you naturally emit. And because of that, some people didn't just fail to reach you, they ended up haunted by the consequences of even trying. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. Deuteronomy 28:7. You are not their battlefield. You are their judgment. Have you ever asked yourself why certain people started seeing shadows, hearing things, or spiraling into depression after crossing you? It wasn't your doing. It was the result of unauthorized access. Just like a high-security system locks out hackers and alerts the system administrator, your soul alerted heaven, and they got locked out of your field. They walked into the fire thinking it was a game and got scorched by their own arrogance. Think of Whitney Houston. So many people tried to control her gift, manipulate her presence, and capitalize on her essence. But her voice, her God-given frequency, was never truly theirs to own. Even in her trials, she moved people because what she carried was untouchable. Like you, she wasn't just talented. She was encoded with something higher. You were never meant to fit in. You were designed to be impossible to infiltrate. That's why relationships failed when their hearts weren't clean. That's why jobs rejected you before you could bring your light into toxic systems. That's why old friends turned into enemies once they couldn't manipulate you anymore. You were pre-coded, and every failed attempt to access your spirit was a confirmation, not a setback. For the Lord, your God, is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. Deuteronomy 24. Victory was wired into you before the battle even began. Take a look at Oprah Winfrey. People tried to ruin her, smear her name, and spiritually dismantle her through media attacks and betrayal. And yet she rose, not through force, but through her encoded frequency of purpose, resilience, and divine alignment. What tried to break her only revealed who she really was. Chosen one, let this be your reminder. You weren't just protected. You were constructed by heaven's own architecture. They didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because your spiritual blueprint made you unreachable. The real warfare wasn't against you. It was against the divine coding you carry. And in that war, no shadow ever stood a chance. Number 2. Their spells hit like rubber because you don't exist in their frequency band. Chosen one, has it ever confused you how others seemed so determined to attack you, yet nothing they sent ever seemed to stick? They tried to block your path, curse your name, delay your progress, but instead of collapsing, you soared higher. Why do you think that is? Here's the truth they never understood. You were never on their frequency to begin with. You don't operate in the same spiritual dimension as them. So when they launched their attacks, they were like archers shooting arrows into the sky, hoping to strike a satellite. They threw curses, chants, spiritual warfare, and toxic intentions like grenades. But to their shock, all they got in return was the sound of their own chaos echoing back. Why? Because you don't live in their energetic atmosphere. Their attacks didn't miss because you're lucky. They missed because you're no longer even visible to that wavelength of darkness. You're vibrating on a level where their tools don't work. It's not about being hidden. It's about being elevated. For you have died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. Colossians 3:3. That's not poetry. That's frequency science wrapped in divine mystery. You've become invisible to enemy radar because your spiritual coordinates don't register on their map. It's the equivalent of someone screaming underwater while you're already flying in the sky. Their words, their rituals, their intentions can't even make it to where you dwell. That's why their spells hit like rubber. Because spiritual gravity doesn't function the same where you are. They were hoping you'd crash, but you were too high up for their storm to reach. Do you realize how powerful that makes you? Think of it like this. Nikola Tesla, a mind centuries ahead of his time, spoke of vibration and frequency long before the world caught on. He once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Tesla understood what the spiritual realm already knew. You rise above attack when you operate on a higher vibrational plane. Like you, he was misunderstood, targeted, even sabotaged. But the brilliance he carried couldn't be undone because his mind and spirit operated outside the reach of low-level interference. That's you, chosen one. Every spell they cast, lost signal. Every dark word spoken behind your back, echoes in an empty chamber. Every attempt to tether you to guilt, shame, or stagnation, a failed system reboot. Not because you retaliated, but because you were never connected to that system to begin with. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. It's not just light that defeats darkness, it's the fact that light and darkness cannot occupy the same space. You didn't have to fight back, you simply had to keep shining. They couldn't strike you because their energy wasn't compatible with yours. Have you noticed how they kept casting, kept gossiping, kept returning to your name like a spell would finally break through this time? And yet, each time they tried, something bizarre happened. Not to you, but to them. Their mental clarity started to dissolve. They grew paranoid. Their sleep became disturbed. Their finances began to dry up. They weren't being cursed by you. They were being haunted by the backlash of tampering with holy frequency. Take Bob Marley, for example. His messages carried light, truth, and spiritual resistance. While systems tried to silence or politicize him, his spirit operated on such a high wavelength that no smear campaign ever truly touched his legacy. His enemies were aiming in the dark, and every time they fired, they only exhausted themselves more. That's what's happening to those who keep trying to touch you, chosen one. They assumed you were a sitting target. They thought you were in the same room, the same field, the same bandwidth. But you had already upgraded. You're running on a version of spiritual software they don't have access to. Their curses, like outdated code trying to infect a quantum system. It simply doesn't run. And when a signal doesn't land, it returns to the sender, louder, sharper, and more unstable. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. They were sowing into dimensions they didn't understand, and the harvest was their own undoing. Have you ever asked yourself why you felt so unconcerned while others were obsessing over you? That calm wasn't ignorance, it was evidence that you're dwelling in divine alignment. While they were throwing darkness into the void, you were building, glowing, rising. You didn't need to defend yourself because heaven had already written a firewall around your purpose. The frequency of divine assignment is not accessible through witchcraft, envy, or manipulation. Look at Maya Angelou, a woman who faced deep betrayal, abuse, racism, and spiritual warfare. Yet, her words, her rhythm, her soul could not be silenced. Her poetry elevated her out of the frequency of those who sought to reduce her. Like you, she didn't retaliate. She transcended. Her presence didn't just reject hatred, it exposed it. They thought they were binding you, but all they did was entangle themselves in spiritual loops. Every move they made brought more confusion to their own lives. Every curse was a boomerang they didn't realize they threw into an echo chamber. You weren't rejecting them. Their energy was auto-ejecting itself. Your field doesn't accept that input. It's programmed to return all foreign transmissions to sender. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91:1. You don't have to dodge bullets when you live above the battlefield. You don't have to shout in defense when your silence is already a rebuke. Chosen one, you are not unreachable because you're hiding. You are unreachable because the spiritual version of you is vibrating at coordinates they don't have the keys for. They don't even know what dimension to search in anymore. While they're still casting shadows in dimly lit rooms, you've already stepped into God's spotlight. And no hex, chant, or obsession can reach what was coded to transcend. They try to track your spirit, but your energy isn't listed on their spiritual map anymore. You are untouchable by design. Number 3. Their rituals turned toxic because they were fueling a loop they didn't understand. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why some people seem to fall apart after targeting you, even when you did nothing in return? Why does their life unravel? Why do they become mentally unstable, physically depleted, spiritually tormented? The answer isn't random. It's not karma in the abstract, it's spiritual law that they never truly understood. When they performed rituals against you, they weren't just playing with candles and chants. They were signing invisible contracts with energy they could not control. Rituals, no matter how mystical they seem, are energy agreements. They're not just shows under moonlight. They're spiritual exchanges, where the sender invests a portion of their own soul as currency. Every time they whispered your name in darkness, every time they tried to bind your blessings or reroute your destiny, they were fueling a closed loop. But here's the problem. They were never given access. And when energy can't reach its target, it doesn't disappear. It multiplies in the container that released it. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. They didn't just cast shadows. They walked into the ones they created. You, chosen one, never consented. You never opened your spirit to their frequency. And because of that, their spells had no route to travel. So what happened? Their energy had no exit. And when energy has no target, it rebounds with force, often stronger than when it left. They weren't prepared for the return. They thought they were in control, but they were feeding a system designed to self-destruct. Think of it like electricity. If you try to send current through a wire with no grounding, it will short-circuit and burn the source. That's exactly what happened when they came for you. Their hate became their own fire. Their spell circle became their own prison. Their energy loop had nowhere to go, and so it did the only thing it could. It began to eat them alive. Look at Aleister Crowley, a historical figure obsessed with dark magic and rituals. He thought he could master the forces of the unseen world, commanding energies for selfish power. But in the end, he was consumed by madness, addiction, and instability. The very spirits he summoned turned on him. The energies he believed he controlled spiraled beyond his grasp. Why? Because you can't fuel a dark system indefinitely without becoming its final sacrifice. They have dug a pit for me to fall in, but they themselves will fall into it. Psalm 57, verse 6. You don't need revenge, chosen one. Spiritual loops handle themselves. Every time they lit a candle, thinking it would curse your path, they ignited their own. Every time they spilled words over your name, hoping to tie your destiny, they were spiritually binding themselves. They were pouring spiritual poison into a system with no drainage, and eventually that poison began to seep into their mind, their body, their soul. That's why they began to look drained. That's why they aged faster, broke down quicker, became anxious, paranoid, or irrational. The system they created needed to feed, and they became its only food source. Do you realize now why silence is so powerful? Why you never had to respond, retaliate, or even acknowledge the attack? Because your silence was not weakness, it was insulation. You weren't ignoring them, you were staying outside of their contract. And in the spirit realm, lack of consent breaks the circuit. Think about Princess Diana. So many rituals, political, emotional, spiritual, were done to diminish her light. But she never played their game. And because she didn't engage, their narratives eventually turned on them. The system imploded. Diana became an icon. And those who tried to control her, history has remembered them not as victors but as manipulators exposed by their own strategies, just like the ones who tried to work against you. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Psalm 23:5. While they burned incense in secrecy, heaven was anointing you publicly. They thought they were directing spiritual traffic, as if they could assign your fate, reroute your blessings, or delay what heaven already greenlit. But chosen one, you never opened the gate. Their spell was a GPS without coordinates. And because of that, the energy began to loop on itself over and over. until it had no choice but to tear apart the one who fueled it. Have you ever noticed how someone obsessed with tearing you down started looking sick, or how their mood, their finances, their relationships began to crumble? It's not because you cursed them, it's because you didn't participate in the agreement, and a contract without mutual consent becomes an implosion. That's why their own rituals became poison. They created a loop to destroy you, but you were never inside it, and so the only one trapped was them. Take the example of Howard Hughes, a man with massive power and wealth who eventually became spiritually tormented by obsessions, compulsions, and darkness. He created a fortress of control around himself, but it ended up suffocating him. The energy he put out into the world without balance came back for him. His mind became the battlefield. This is what happens when people try to manipulate reality without understanding the spiritual laws behind it. Let them be caught in the traps they set for others. Psalm 141, verse 10. The energy loop becomes the judgment, and the judgment doesn't require your participation. Number 4. You're not an opponent in their game. You're the glitch that breaks their entire system. Chosen one, have you ever felt like people were strategizing against you, setting traps, making plans, whispering curses? But none of it ever seemed to work. Do you wonder why they keep launching attack after attack, only to end up more confused and broken each time? It's because you're not part of their game. You're not a piece on their board. You're not the player across from them. You're the system error that crashes the entire game. They approached you like it was a spiritual chess match. They lit their candles, murmured their mantras, timed their movements with moon phases, and calculated your supposed weaknesses like good little sorcerers following a cursed recipe. They moved with arrogance, pawns here, knights there, thinking they were clever. But what they didn't realize is this: you weren't an opponent they could outsmart. You were the anomaly they didn't program for. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. That light is you, and when darkness tries to operate around it, systems malfunction. Darkness can't process unfiltered truth. It panics, and panic breeds collapse. In their eyes, you were just another target, predictable, manipulatable, controllable. But the moment they chanted your name into their little jars and flames, the entire system glitched, because your energy doesn't conform. You're not built on fear, trauma, or shame, the ingredients most of their rituals depend on. Spiritual attacks don't succeed by power alone. They rely on spiritual access points. And guess what? You've sealed everyone. Have you ever wondered why guilt never swallows you anymore? Why fear doesn't paralyze you like it used to? That's not numbness. That's growth. That's divine coding. You've outlived your vulnerability. You've healed what they needed to hijack. And now, when they launch their programs against you, the commands don't compute. You, dear children, are from God and have overcome them, because the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. 1 John 4:4. The God in you rewrites every algorithm. Consider Alan Turing, the father of modern computing. He created a machine that broke the Nazi code during World War II. His genius didn't just solve problems, it rendered enemy systems useless. You, chosen one, are the spiritual version of that. You don't just defend, you disrupt. You don't play by the rules of spiritual warfare. You're the equation that turns their ritual into nonsense. That's why their curses didn't simply fail. They backfired explosively. Their systems rely on code you no longer speak. Fear, guilt, self-hate, desperation. These are the doorways. But when you stopped vibrating in those patterns, you closed the ports they needed. And now, every attack they send into the system becomes a signal loop that devours itself. You don't fight back. You crash the entire platform. You are unreadable. And in spiritual warfare, that is terrifying. They can't scan your weakness. They can't track your triggers. You are unpredictable, And unpredictability is power. Take Rosa Parks, for instance. The system thought it understood black women. It thought it could predict their behavior, contain their power. But Rosa didn't shout or riot, she just sat. And in doing so, she broke the entire game. Her resistance wasn't loud, it was divine. Her unpredictability was the glitch that rewrote a generation. That's you. You didn't storm their gates. You didn't match their darkness. You simply refused to play the role they assigned. And that refusal broke the mechanics of their entire structure. They assumed if they hit you with spells, you'd crumble. If they stirred chaos, you'd panic. But instead, your silence made them uneasy. Your joy confused them. Your rise enraged them. Why? Because they couldn't figure out where their system was failing. They followed every ritual step, but they couldn't decode you. The Lord frustrates the plans of the nations. He thwarts the purposes of the peoples. Psalm 33:10. When God's hand is on you, even well-crafted strategies collapse into dust. Have you noticed how they keep returning to your name? How they chant harder, dig deeper, try stranger rituals, only to fall apart more each time? That's not persistence, that's spiritual madness. They're caught in a loop, trying to fix a code they don't understand. And every time they touch your frequency, it short-circuits the rest of their ritual. It's like trying to install malware on a system that's quantum encrypted. The virus doesn't infect, it self-destructs. And every time they attempt to breach your field, they send themselves deeper into spiritual confusion. You don't just resist their rituals, you break their spiritual infrastructure. Look at Frida Kahlo. Her body was broken, her heart betrayed, her life filled with pain. But her art disrupted every frame they put around her. She didn't play by their ideas of womanhood, illness, or expression. She became a glitch in a cultural system. Her pain turned into prophecy, just like you. Your past didn't weaken you, it encoded you with spiritual fire. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. Proverbs 21:30. You're not just defended, you are divinely disruptive. You don't win because you play better. You win because you break the game itself. Number 5. Your DNA holds a light signature that burns through their dark mechanisms. Chosen one, have you ever asked yourself why the attacks aimed at you seem to collapse mid-air? Why curses lose their edge? Why rituals dissolve before they reach you? Why those who target you spiritually end up harmed by their own doing? It's not because you're merely protected, it's because your very being was encoded with a divine light signature they can't withstand. You see, most people misunderstand spiritual attacks. They think spells and rituals are nothing more than mystical theatrics, but spiritually awakened souls like you know better. Spiritual attacks are not just symbolic, they're coded frequencies. Every curse, every hex, every ritual is an intentional vibration sent to find resonance in your field. Think of it like malware searching for a weakness in a computer system. It seeks out wounds, fear, shame, pain, and if it finds even the smallest crack, it latches on. But what happens when the system is not just strong, but divinely rewritten? For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. Ephesians 5:8. You no longer carry the old code. You were rebuilt in the light. Before you even entered this realm, your soul underwent an upgrade. Chosen one, your DNA isn't ordinary. You didn't just arrive here. You were sent, pre-modified, pre-fortified, pre-anointed. The spiritual software in you has been altered by the Most High to be incompatible with low-frequency energy. That's why when they try to access you through rituals, it doesn't just fail, it malfunctions. You don't just block the program, you fry it from the inside out. Think of Malala Yousafzai, targeted by an entire ideology of darkness. They aimed to silence her, but instead, Her light signature turned their attack into a global awakening. She didn't fight back with revenge. She existed in her truth, and her truth scrambled their system. That's you. You walk into rooms and unseen spells dissolve, not because you cast counterspells, but because your frequency is truth in motion. Do you understand now why people grow uneasy around you without knowing why? Why their shadows get louder when you enter the space? It's because your presence is not neutral. You don't absorb their chaos. You expose it. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. That verse isn't poetic. It's your operating system. Every curse they send is a calculation, a coded vibration crafted in jealousy, rage, or insecurity. And yes, it may have worked on others, but you are not like others. Their energy arrives expecting to attach, but instead it encounters resistance. And not passive resistance, active dismantling. The frequency of your soul doesn't just block, it emits a countercode so pure that their magic melts, their incantations lose rhythm, their focus scatters, their tools go dead. Think of Steve Jobs, whose innovations broke entire industries and rewrote systems. Competitors tried to emulate his designs, copy his flow, but the signature code behind it was too advanced. It couldn't be duplicated. That's what your soul is doing in the spiritual realm. They can't replicate your essence. And when they try to inject chaos into your system, it's like trying to install 1990s malware into a quantum computer. It crashes before it even loads. This is why, chosen one, some people who've spiritually attacked you began to suffer strange symptoms: physical exhaustion, nightmares, mental fragmentation, emotional collapse. They assumed they were launching power, but they were launching vulnerability into the presence of incorruptible light. And light doesn't just defend, it rewrites everything it touches. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. You weren't made to dim, you were made to disrupt. Do you see it now? You're not immune because you got lucky or because someone said a prayer. You are immune because you are living software powered by spiritual light. And every time someone tries to breach your energy field with darkness, it's as if they're throwing ice at the sun. The ice doesn't hit, it evaporates. Take Martin Luther King Jr. The more they attacked him, the more powerful his energy became. His message wasn't built on retaliation. It was built on a moral frequency that didn't resonate with violence or fear. His very existence scrambled the systems trying to break him, and his legacy still does. That's what you carry. You scramble what tries to curse you simply by being. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalm 27:1. This is the blueprint of your spiritual DNA. Fearless, sealed, illuminated. And here's the part that scares them most. You don't even have to try. You don't need candles, counterspells, or incantations. Your existence in divine alignment is enough to trigger a system crash in anything that isn't based in truth. Their curses fail, not because you resist them, but because you transcend them. The spell collapses the moment it detects your vibration, because your frequency isn't just higher, it's hostile to lies. You aren't just protected, you're the firewall, the purifier, the spiritual light sequence that burns dark algorithms at contact. And the more aligned you are with your purpose, the stronger that signature becomes. You're not just immune, you're actively dismantling anything not built in truth. Number 6. They mistook your stillness for weakness, but you were operating from an unreachable axis. Chosen one, have you ever watched people misread your silence as surrender? Do you recall the moments when they launched spiritual attacks, stirred gossip, lit candles, or whispered your name into rituals? only to grow confused when you didn't respond. To them, your stillness looked like fear. They assumed their tactics were working, but what they didn't understand was this: you weren't paralyzed, you were positioned. They didn't realize that your silence wasn't born of defeat, it was born of elevation. You weren't frozen in terror, you were centered in divine command. When their energy came searching for your weakness, all it found was an axis it couldn't touch. While they operated through emotional bait and spiritual provocation, you stood unmoved, not because you lacked power, but because your power was too refined to respond on their level. In returning and rest, you shall be saved. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. Your stillness was never weakness, it was weaponized peace. They couldn't comprehend how someone could absorb so much hate without snapping, but what they didn't see was the altitude of your soul. You had already ascended above the reach of their warfare. While they played chess on a crumbling board, you governed from an invisible tower. Their strategies were designed to trigger rage, fear, retaliation, but you never gave them the satisfaction. Why? Because they were fighting shadows while you walked in light. Think of Barack Obama, enduring years of media attacks, slander, and spiritual resistance. But he rarely reacted emotionally. His power came from calm control, a stillness that unnerved his opponents. His refusal to retaliate on their level didn't make him weak. It made him untouchable, just like you. Have you ever asked yourself why their rituals fell flat despite their intensity? Why their curses echoed but never penetrated? It's because you weren't where they assumed you were. You weren't low enough to be reached by fear-based frequencies. You weren't operating on the emotional bandwidth they needed to infiltrate. You had transcended. And in that spiritual atmosphere, their attacks had no coordinates to follow. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. Psalm 91:4. While they thought they were breaking you, heaven had already shielded you in stillness. They expected you to break, lash out, defend yourself loudly, but you gave them silence, not avoidance, divine stillness. And that silence, chosen one, became the very thing that shattered their plan. You see, dark energy requires a landing strip. It needs something to hook into: emotion, chaos, fear. But your soul, refined through fire, had none of those vulnerabilities left exposed. Take Bruce Lee, who once said, "Be like water." When others used brute force, he taught that strength is in stillness and flow. His calm presence dismantled opponents before they struck. You embody the same principle. Your stillness disorients those who come expecting war. They were playing spiritual tag, casting spells, tracking energy fields, probing for pain. But you were off-grid. You weren't even in the same game. Your field had no door for them to enter. Your mind carried no fear for them to hook into. Your heart had no bitterness for them to manipulate. You became invisible to their warfare, not because you were hiding, but because you were elevated. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. They expected a brawl but found a mirror, and in that mirror they saw only themselves. Chosen one, can you see the brilliance in what God has done in you? Your restraint was not weakness, it was wisdom. They mistook your non-engagement as paralysis, but what they encountered was an atmosphere too pure for their toxicity to survive. They threw fire, and it returned as silence. They cast shadows, and you cast none back. That is spiritual mastery. That is divine sovereignty in action. Think about Mother Teresa, constantly criticized, often misunderstood, and yet never retaliating. Her life was still, consistent, holy. She operated in realms of compassion that darkness couldn't invade. She didn't win battles. She ended wars simply by not participating in them. When they got nothing back from you, no anger, no retaliation, no fear, their entire system began to crack. Why? Because it was built on reaction. When you gave them nothing, they had nowhere to go. Like a parasite without a host, their energy turned inward. Their curses began to eat them. Their rituals unraveled into madness. And all the while, you continued walking forward, quiet, focused, above. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the anger of my foes. With your right hand, you save me. Psalm 138:7. You didn't resist with force. You existed in faith, and that was enough. Chosen one, remember this. You are dangerous because you don't engage, not in the way they want, not in the way they can predict. You are unshaken, not because you lack emotion, but because you've mastered your axis. They thought your silence meant defeat, but really it was confirmation that they were never even close. Number 7. You're not protected by spirits. You are the spirit they should have never challenged. Chosen one, do you know who you truly are? Or have you simply forgotten the magnitude of your essence because this world trained you to think small? They thought they were attacking a person, a name, a face, a soul, with a bit of luck and a few guardian spirits on their side. But what they truly provoked was an ancient sovereign force housed in human form. You are not merely protected by spirits, you are the spirit that should have never been challenged in the first place. They thought they were up against someone ordinary, but you never were. Your silence, your gentleness, your restraint, it deceived them. But behind that still exterior is a soul that has walked through epochs. You're not simply being defended by ancestors. You are one. You didn't call upon angels. You remember being one. That's why their rituals didn't just fail, they imploded. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah 1:5. You weren't created in the moment of your birth. You were reintroduced. Have you ever wondered why your dreams feel more like flashbacks? Why you carry wisdom beyond your years and move with an authority you've never been taught? It's because you're not new here. You've done this before. In other lives you wielded the very forces they now try to manipulate. Their chanting, their dolls, their jars. Those are toys to a spirit like yours. They tried to hex a general from the divine realms. They tried to bind a gatekeeper. Take Harriet Tubman, for example. She didn't just free bodies. She moved as if she was guided by forces that understood terrain no one could see. She spoke of visions, inner voices, and guidance from realms beyond. Her captors never understood her, because she wasn't only flesh, she was mission wrapped in matter, like you. They thought they were launching curses, but they were firing static at a frequency older than language. You carry a vibration that precedes spellcraft itself. Your aura speaks in tones that disrupt incantations before they form. Your name, when spoken in hate, activates protection without permission, not because someone is shielding you, but because you command the universe by your very presence. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Zephaniah 3:17. They tried to war with a warrior surrounded by celestial music. How could they win? Look at Nikola Tesla, often dismissed as eccentric, but his mind operated in dimensions beyond the physical. He spoke of downloads, frequencies, and light forms few could comprehend. People mocked what they couldn't match. That's you. They aren't attacking your actions. They're resisting your signature. Every time they tried to target you, the energy turned into chaos. Why? Because the universe doesn't just protect you, it remembers you. And with every attempt they made, they weren't defying fate. They were confronting memory. And that memory fought for you. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Psalm 34, verse 7. Except you don't just have angels around you, you've commanded them in other realms. Think of Joan of Arc, a teenager who led armies, claiming divine vision and heavenly commands. Her authority terrified both church and state. They tried to silence her with fire, but her essence ignited history instead. Like her, your divine rank is coded into your spiritual frequency. You don't just carry legacy, you are the legacy. Number 8. They couldn't bind you because your soul lives in multiple realms simultaneously. Chosen one, have you ever felt yourself drift, like a part of you is always somewhere else, always aware, always watching? That's not your imagination, that's your multidimensional design. While they tried to trap you using spells anchored in the physical world, candles, sigils, knots and charms, you were never fully here to begin with. They couldn't bind you because your soul is scattered across dimensions like divine light through a prism. They assumed you could be locked into a box, that your power was local, that you existed in one place, one body, one name. But what they were targeting was only the echo, not the source. You are cloud, mist, current, and vapor all at once. They tried to catch smoke with ropes, and by the time they called your name in their circle, you had already shifted planes. God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus. Ephesians 2:6. You're not just on earth, you're stationed in the heavenly realms simultaneously. Have you ever woken up from a dream and realized it wasn't a dream at all, but a visit? Do you ever sense something long before it happens because your spirit was already there? That's not a gift. That's your nature. You don't just dream, you witness across timelines. And they, with their primitive tools, were only casting spells into one realm, while you vibrated across 7. Think of Leonardo da Vinci, a mind unbound by time, painting, inventing, dissecting, imagining things centuries ahead. He was rumored to see into the future. His brilliance wasn't from study alone, it was access. That's what you carry. Not just knowledge, but dimensional memory. They thought they could bind you with earth-based rituals, but their spells require static targets. And you are in constant motion. Your spirit is braided into time, realms, and frequencies that they don't even have words for. Every time they tried to attack you, they missed, not because they aimed wrong, but because you weren't there anymore. For our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. Philippians 3:20. That's why nothing landed. You're a heavenly citizen, operating on divine passport. Look at David Bowie, a being who seemed to transcend era, gender, genre, and form. People called him alien, starseed, prophet. He didn't just create, he channeled, he existed in layers. That's how your spirit functions. You don't fight darkness from one point, you overwhelm it from all angles. And that's what drives them mad. Not only could they not bind you, they couldn't even locate you. Every effort they made addressed a version of you that had already evolved. The real you. It had moved on, restructured, rerouted the signal. They needed to pin you down to access you. But you are a divine river, and rivers don't hold still. The wind blows where it wishes. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone born of the Spirit. John 3:8. You are the wind, felt but not caught. Take Carlos Castaneda, whose spiritual writings spoke of warriors living with one foot in ordinary reality and one in the spirit world. That's you, a traveler, a presence, not fixed but expansive, not bound but braided through divine planes. They can chant, they can curse, they can cry, but they will never catch you, because your presence is spread across timelines, bending through dimensions that require divine clearance, and they don't have the key. Every spell they cast touched the shadow of you, while your essence continued untouched in higher realms. They didn't fail because they lacked power. They failed because they were always several dimensions behind. Number 9. The rituals backfired because they were never authorized to speak your name. Chosen one, have you ever felt your name carry more weight than others? Like when it's spoken, even in a whisper, something stirs in the atmosphere. That's not just your imagination. In the spiritual realm, your name is not just a word. It's a divine seal, a code written with holy fire and eternal memory. And when someone invokes it without permission, they do more than offend heaven. They trigger its judgment. They thought speaking your name was harmless, just syllables in a ritual, just a part of the incantation. But what they didn't know is that your name is a spiritual key, and keys unlock power. Your name is connected to realms they have no access to. So when they spoke it in ceremonies, thinking it was just a vibration to command, they weren't casting spells. They were committing identity theft against divinity. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Exodus 27. Now imagine what happens when they misuse the name of someone encoded by the Most High. They underestimated what your name carried. It's not tied to this life alone. It carries karmic weight, divine contracts, spiritual inheritance. When they said it with ill intent, it wasn't just a ritual misfire, it was a cosmic violation. In higher realms, names are not for play. They are living frequencies. Your name doesn't represent you, it is you. And attempting to manipulate it without clearance activated a law they didn't even believe in: spiritual prosecution. Look at Rumi, whose words have carried timeless resonance because they were channeled from realms most poets never accessed. To try to recite his verses without spiritual reverence is to misinterpret a frequency too sacred to imitate. That's what your enemies did with your name. They attempted to channel an essence far beyond their rank. Did they think there would be no consequence? That speaking your name would yield results because it worked on others? They didn't realize that some names are guarded by heaven itself. Your name didn't just echo, it reported, it alerted spiritual courts. And once the case was open, judgment followed. Not slowly, not metaphorically, but in the form of chaos, sickness, confusion, and despair. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are ever before me. Isaiah 49:16. When God engraves your name into eternity, no one gets to misuse it without a divine reaction. Think about Moses. When others tried to imitate his authority, like Korah or the magicians of Pharaoh, they paid the price. Why? Because you cannot impersonate someone carrying divine appointment. That's what happened when they used your name. They didn't realize it was an invocation of a legacy that outdates their rituals. Have you ever noticed how people start to unravel after trying to bind you? How their homes grow tense, their energy becomes frantic, and their sleep becomes haunted? That's not karma, that's legal consequence in the spiritual realm. Because what they tried to use as a tool became a trigger for divine enforcement. The energy didn't just bounce back, it executed judgment. Do not touch my anointed ones, do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 16:22. That command doesn't need repetition. Your name is already encoded under that order. Consider Frida Kahlo, whose name today holds artistic and spiritual weight. To copy her style without understanding her pain is to misstep. Her name carries more than reputation. It holds energy. Yours does too. Your name has depth, history, rank. And when spoken without honor, it creates disturbance not just in the room, but in the realm. Number 10. They used blood and fire, but you were concealed in an element they can't control: ether. Chosen one, how many times have people tried to reach you through traditional means? They tried candles, sigils, spoken curses, tokens soaked in hate, all rituals rooted in the four elements: fire, water, earth, and air. But no matter how elaborate the ceremony, nothing landed. Why? Because you aren't rooted in those elements. You were formed in ether, the fifth, untouchable force. Ether is the element of spirit, space, and divine intelligence. It cannot be seen, touched, or manipulated by low-vibration energy. It is the birthplace of vision, prophecy, and higher awareness. While they played with earthbound tools, you existed in the invisible architecture above their reach. That's why their fire didn't burn you, their water didn't drown you, their blood didn't bind you. You were never there. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. John 3:8. That's you, born of ether, operating in flow they cannot trace. Have you ever wondered why no curse stuck, no binding held, no dark chant found traction? It's because you don't operate in the dimensions where those tools work. You are formless essence housed in a body for mission. Their rituals are form-based. But your spirit, it's elementless, limitless, cloaked in light. Think of Marie Curie, who worked with forces invisible to the human eye: radioactivity, energy, atomic power. What she discovered reshaped science. That's how your presence works in the spiritual realm. You affect things beyond visibility. You transform frequencies, even when you say nothing. They believed they could trap you using physical symbolism, but you aren't a symbol. You are spirit-made movement. Ether doesn't resist, it dissolves. And every time they reach for you, their hands pass through fog, only to cut themselves on what they couldn't grasp. Not because you attacked, but because your energy self-defends through truth. For in him we live and move and have our being. Acts 17:28. When your identity is woven into source, no earthly element can claim you. Remember Bruce Lee's philosophy. Be like water, he said, but in your case you are beyond water. You are ether. You're the space between the moves, the intelligence behind the form. They were trying to cast spells in a temple that was never built for them. That's why they felt resistance, because they were never meant to enter. They thought their rituals would trap you, but their tools were two-dimensional in a multi-dimensional field. Your aura doesn't match their ingredients. Your presence doesn't echo in their circles. While they call on old names, you respond only to Source. And Source doesn't sit in fire or earth. It speaks in ether through you. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. 2 Corinthians 10:4. They used blood and fire, but you walk with weapons they've never seen. Think of Nikola Tesla, again, a man who said the universe is built on energy, frequency, and vibration. He understood ether before scientists could explain it. You carry that same knowing. Your presence shifts rooms. Not because of effort, but because your energy is not measurable by natural means. Number 11. You operate under sovereign law. Their spells collapse under your jurisdiction. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why every attempt to curse, bind, or spiritually attack you falls apart before it even begins? Why rituals seem to glitch, curses backfire, and dark energy never lands where it's intended? It's not because you're avoiding them. It's because you operate under a higher jurisdiction, a realm of divine sovereignty where their rules simply don't apply. You are not governed by karmic cycles in the same way others are. You are not shackled to contracts made in ignorance or agreements formed in lower realms. You are not bound by the universal law of cause and effect, like most. You've been lifted into a place where your soul is no longer under the court of the collective, but under the authority of spiritual sovereignty. This isn't arrogance, it's divine appointment. But our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ. Philippians 3:20. You've been registered in the courts of eternity, and earthly spells don't have clearance there. Have you ever felt like the attacks against you were dismissed before they ever reached you? That's not luck, that's jurisdiction. Every time they try to drag you into cycles of debt, guilt, karma, or bondage, they're filing spiritual paperwork in a court that doesn't recognize their case. You're a sovereign entity, a free agent in the cosmic court system, and your soul's constitution is not subject to manipulation. Consider Nelson Mandela, imprisoned, condemned, attacked, yet he emerged not bitter but stronger, because the systems that bound his body never had jurisdiction over his soul. He operated under a higher law. So do you. They don't understand why their spiritual mechanics fail when it comes to you. They light the candles, they chant the words, they call on energies, but nothing happens. Why? Because they're attempting to enforce laws that don't govern your realm. It's like showing up at the Supreme Court with a fake neighborhood ordinance. It gets thrown out immediately. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all. Psalm 103, verse 19. That includes you, chosen, appointed, sealed by divine authority. Do you know how powerful that makes you? Not only are their rituals ineffective, you actually invalidate their legal right to even attempt spiritual control. Your energy signature carries divine immunity. The spells don't fizzle because they're weak. They collapse because your system doesn't accept fraudulent authority. Take Queen Elizabeth I, who refused to be married off for political gain, governing not as a queen under others' rules, but as a sovereign ruler in her own right. Like her, you don't just exist within spiritual law, you enact it. They try to claim you under soul contracts, but your spirit burned those long ago. They try to manipulate karma, hoping to make you pay for things they set in motion. But your cosmic record has been cleared by sovereign decree. Every time they accuse, attempt, or manipulate, the court of heaven overrules them. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. Isaiah 54:17. Their evidence? Invalid. Their authority? Rejected. Their strategy? Overturned. Think about Martin Luther King Jr., constantly accused, surveilled, plotted against, but he walked in a mission so pure, his presence dismissed every plot laid against him. His jurisdiction came from heaven, not from approval. Chosen one, you are not evading their spells. You are dismissing their legitimacy. They tried to trap you in laws you've already transcended. They spoke incantations into rooms that don't hold your voice print. And in the divine courts, your name appears not as a case to be judged, but as a sovereign authority that cancels out false verdicts. So while they scramble to enforce their spiritual illusions, you remain seated, above, untouched, and in control. You're not playing their game. You rewrote the rules. Number 12. They wanted to destroy you, not realizing their intent was the GPS that guided your blessings. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how every attack against you ended up leading you to something greater? Every betrayal, every false accusation, every dark intention, it all somehow became a stepping stone to your next elevation. That's not coincidence. That's how your spiritual system is built. They tried to destroy you. They poured hatred into words, curses into rituals, venom into plans. But they didn't realize they were handing your destiny a map. Their obsession became your guidance. Their malice was repurposed into movement. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. What they aimed to kill you with became the blueprint of your rise. Do you understand what kind of power you walk in? Your energy field is coded to reverse engineer negativity. Every attempt to harm you is intercepted, restructured, and reassigned as fuel. What was sent as a roadblock becomes divine GPS. Their hate becomes data. Their attacks become coordinates. Their curses become blueprints. Take Oprah Winfrey, who was targeted with racism, abuse, and sabotage. Yet, every challenge she faced became a building block for her empire. She turned pain into purpose, attacks into alignment. Her rise was architected by adversity, just like yours. They threw stones hoping to watch you break, but every stone became a brick, a path, a wall, a platform. Instead of bleeding, you built. Instead of hiding, you climbed. They thought they were disorienting you, but they unknowingly illuminated your path. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in their way. Psalm 37:23. Even your enemies are used to map those steps. Have you ever asked why their attacks seem to backfire so consistently? Why every setback births an upgrade? Because your spiritual design isn't just resistant, it's responsive. Your soul takes darkness and spins it into direction. You are built to turn malice into momentum. Look at Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team, rejected and overlooked. But instead of shrinking, he turned that dismissal into an obsession for greatness. He didn't just win, he dominated. The very rejection became the GPS toward immortality. They wanted you to lose faith, break down, disappear, but their pressure clarified your vision. Every painful encounter became a directional signal toward your next breakthrough. They thought they were delaying your purpose, but their intent became part of the divine code, accelerating it. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. Even their hate was drafted into your mission. Think about Maya Angelou, whose early life was marked by trauma, silence, and violation. Yet she didn't crumble, she transformed. Her voice became a weapon of light, and the very darkness meant to destroy her became the echo that elevated her across generations. Chosen one, this isn't just poetic, this is spiritual mechanics. You've been encoded to alchemize adversity. Their intent can't destroy you because your design reroutes destruction into destiny. They thought their curses would end you, but they became the signals that pointed you home. Now, when they look at your strength, your clarity, your elevation, they don't realize they helped build it. Their hate was your compass. Their resistance was your map. Number 13. The more they conjured, the more they unlocked your dormant powers. Chosen one, have you noticed something strange? The harder they came at you, the stronger you became. The more they cursed, the more alive you felt. The more pressure they applied, the more you grew into your true form. At first, you didn't understand it either, but now you're starting to see it. They weren't breaking you, they were building you. Their dark intentions were designed to crush your spirit, to silence your gifts, to contain your growth. They thought the rituals would shatter your will and bend your soul into submission. But instead, you activated. Every dark word they whispered, every spell they lit with hate, was like spiritual weight dropped into your hands. And just like a body grows stronger under resistance, your soul responded with supernatural strength. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. James 1:2-3. Your persecution was never punishment. It was preparation. Have you ever looked back and realized that what should have destroyed you actually woke you up? That the heartbreak, the betrayal, the spiritual warfare didn't leave you weaker, it sparked your awakening. That's because your soul carries ancient resilience. It doesn't crack under attack, it activates under pressure. While they were trying to weaken you, They were unknowingly pressing the on switch to abilities and spiritual gifts you hadn't even discovered yet. Look at Serena Williams. Every time the world tried to reduce her, to shame, belittle, or intimidate her, she responded with excellence that rewrote history. Her dominance wasn't born of ease, it was forged in resistance. Just like you, chosen one. Every curse they cast became a resistance band for your spiritual growth. They pushed, and your soul pushed back harder. They chanted against you, and something divine inside you stirred awake. The ancestral gifts, long dormant, began to move. Prophetic dreams intensified, intuition sharpened. Your spiritual radar went into overdrive. They thought they were weakening you, but all they did was activate your evolution. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. And you didn't just overcome, you evolved in the middle of it. Think of Nelson Mandela, who was locked in prison for 27 years. His captors wanted him silenced and forgotten, but the confinement only sharpened his vision and strengthened his leadership. When he emerged, he didn't crawl. He led a nation into healing. That's the kind of power you carry. Their confinement tactics only increased your capacity. Have you ever wondered why their efforts seem to spark strange spiritual surges in you? Why, during the times of the most intense attacks, you suddenly had deeper insight, higher wisdom, unexplained strength? That's not coincidence. That's your inner systems responding to challenge with divine adaptation. Their curses couldn't suppress you. They became the ceremonial drums that marked your rise. Their spells didn't block your path. They opened the gate to a higher level of consciousness. The more they tried to control you, the more untamable you became. The parts of you that were sleeping, now they're awake. The strength you didn't know you had, now it's alive and moving through you like holy fire. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40:31. You were built to rise, not despite the attacks, but because of them. Think of Chadwick Boseman quietly battling cancer while filming roles that shook the world. The pressure, the private struggle, didn't stop his power, it magnified it. What people thought would destroy him became his most luminous legacy. That's how your spirit works. Darkness refines your light. So, chosen one, never fear their next move. Every spell cast in your direction is spiritual weight training. Every curse becomes a key. You're not just immune, you're ascending. Their attacks aren't stopping you. They're unlocking you. They wanted to break you, but instead, they awakened a warrior they weren't prepared to face. Number 14. They weren't just casting spells, they were signing their own expiry date. Chosen one, do you realize the magnitude of the line they crossed? This wasn't just personal, it was spiritual violation of the highest order. When they aimed their rituals at you, they weren't simply casting energy, they were tampering with sacred infrastructure. They were trying to hack into a divine system, not knowing that every attempt would only trigger their own collapse. You are not just anyone. You were born into this world carrying a divine assignment, a spiritual purpose that's interwoven into the fabric of cosmic balance. Your path isn't just important, it's protected by the architecture of the universe itself. So when they came after you, they weren't just targeting a person, they were provoking the spiritual ecosystem that holds reality together. He who touches you touches the apple of his eye. Zechariah 2:8. Your existence is not casual, it is protected at the level of divine protocol. Have you ever wondered why things in their lives began to unravel so violently after they targeted you? Why their relationships broke down, their health declined, their minds fell into chaos? It wasn't revenge, it was spiritual recalibration. They triggered laws of balance they didn't even believe in. Because in the universe, when you violate divine order, the correction is immediate and unavoidable. Look at Richard Nixon. The more he tried to control power through hidden means, the more the very system he served exposed him. The Watergate scandal wasn't just political. It was the collapse of someone who crossed ethical lines he thought were invisible. Just like those who try to work darkly against you, every spell cast against you became a timestamp on their own collapse. They thought they were bending the rules. What they didn't see is that you were the rule they could never bend. You're not just protected, you're written into the universe as a non-negotiable. And when they touched that sacred code without clearance, they signed their spiritual termination form. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. They reaped the chaos they sent, because justice is woven into your frequency. Think of Princess Diana, whose death was surrounded by systems of secrecy and betrayal, and yet her legacy rose like a phoenix. Those who tried to control the narrative ended up exposed and erased by the light she left behind. That's what happens when people interfere with divine missions. They set a countdown on their own relevance. Have you noticed the sudden misfortunes that followed those who plotted against you? The financial ruin, the public disgrace, the spiritual emptiness? That's not random. That's cosmic recalibration. They broke into the vault of heaven with sticky fingers, not realizing the vault was booby-trapped with consequence. Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Psalm 105, verse 15. They were warned spiritually, intuitively, energetically, but they chose to override every signal, and the system responded with divine lockdown. Look at Julian Assange, whose exposure of powerful systems brought swift global response. Whether loved or hated, his actions triggered unavoidable consequence. That's what happens when someone interacts with sacred or secret infrastructure. The system doesn't forget. They thought they were summoning power. What they were doing was cutting into a divine framework that responds with surgical correction. And you were never meant to suffer. You were meant to stand untouched while the system corrected itself around you. So, chosen one, as you continue to rise, understand this. Their rituals were never about you. They were about exposing themselves. They declared war on a force they couldn't define. And in doing so, they walked directly into their own expiration. You didn't have to fight. The laws of heaven fought for you. Chosen ones, if this message stirred something deep in your soul, if it reminded you of your true nature, your untouchable essence, your divine authority, then I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for walking this journey with me. Your presence here is no accident. You are part of a collective rising, a movement of awakened spirits reclaiming their power in a world that tried to suppress it. If you feel led and would like to support this mission, you can donate through Super Thanks below. Whether you give or not, please know that your energy, your time, your engagement, and your courage to simply be here are already more valuable than you know. And I'm deeply grateful. If this message resonated with you and you're ready to step fully into your spiritual power, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the truth that sets you free. Like this video to declare your strength. Drop a comment below to share your story, your insight, or your breakthrough. You never know who your voice might set free. And if someone you love needs this reminder, share it forward. We rise not just for ourselves, but for those still searching in the dark. Together we are more than survivors. We are sovereign, unbreakable, unshakable, and divinely protected beyond comprehension. May the Most High surround you with clarity, cover you in peace, and crown you with wisdom beyond this world. You are the storm they didn't see coming. You are the light their spells could never touch. And you are rising right on time. God bless you.